The twin suns of Velmara burned high in the sky, casting golden light across the sprawling crystalline city of Nithal. I leaned against the balcony railing, staring out at the strange yet beautiful skyline, my mind still trying to process what my wife had just said. Sheeza stood beside me, arms crossed over her chest, her glowing emerald eyes locked onto mine with absolute certainty. Her dark sapphire skin shimmered slightly under the sun, her long silver-white hair flowing like liquid starlight down her back. "I am serious, Ethan," she said firmly, her voice carrying the regal authority of her kind. "One child is not enough." I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling hard. "Sheeza, let's just back up for a second. I thought we agreed on one kid. Where is this sudden 10 coming from?" She narrowed her eyes, as if I had just suggested something completely ridiculous. "One child will not strengthen our bloodline. The House of Zenthari has long been one of the most powerful in Velmara, but after the war, our numbers have dwindled." I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around this. "And you think 10 kids is the magic number?" Sheeza tilted her head slightly, the delicate tendrils near her temples shifting, a clear sign of her impatience. 10 is the minimum to ensure genetic diversity and to rebuild our noble lineage. I groaned, rubbing my temples. "Sheeza, I love you, but raising 10 kids, that's a full-time job." She stepped closer, resting her cool hand against my chest. "Then you will have purpose, a grand duty." Her voice softened, but her intensity never wavered. "You are my mate, Ethan. This is our responsibility." I swallowed hard. "Sheeza, I am just a human guy. We don't usually do this many at once." She arched an eyebrow. "Your ancestors on Earth had large families." I sighed. "That was hundreds of years ago. Now people have 1 or 2, maybe 3. Sheeza let out a soft huff, her irritation evident. "Your people used to conquer entire worlds. Have they truly become so weak?" I held up my hands. "Hey, look, it's not about being weak. It's about logistics." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a sultry whisper. "Then let us solve the logistics together." I gulped. Oh boy. I sat at the long obsidian table in our private chamber, elbows resting on my knees as I tried to formulate an argument that wouldn't get me vaporized by my very determined alien wife. Sheeza stood on the other side of the room, watching me, with an expression that was a mix of amusement and absolute certainty that she would win this debate. Her glowing emerald eyes bore into me like a predator watching its prey. I had survived mercenary ambushes, diplomatic feuds, and a ship crash on an unknown planet, but negotiating with my wife. This was an entirely different battlefield. She crossed her arms. "Ethan, you are unusually silent. Are you finally considering the wisdom of my request?" I let out a dry laugh. "No, I'm trying to find the right way to explain why 10 kids is a bad idea." Sheeza tilted her head, her silver-white hair cascading over her shoulder. "And why would it be a bad idea? Enlighten me." I took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do the math. Raising 1 child is already a full-time job on Earth. But 10? That's 10 times the work. 10 times the food, education, medical care." She held up a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "Velmara's technology is far more advanced than your Earth's. Every child will be provided for, educated, and cared for by the House of Zenthari." I shook my head. "That's not the point. Parenting isn't just about resources. It's about time. I don't want to be some absentee father who never sees his kids because we had so many we had to rely on a robotic nanny system." Sheeza's lips curved slightly, as if she found my argument cute. "Ethan," she said, stepping closer, "you underestimate yourself. Human endurance is legendary. Your people have thrived through impossible odds, have adapted and overcome every challenge." She paused, then added with a smirk, "Surely raising 10 of your own offspring should not be beyond you." I groaned, rubbing my temples. She really thought she had me cornered. All right, let's look at this from another angle, I said, standing up. How did your parents handle raising kids? Sheeza's expression softened slightly. Velmara's noble families are raised communally. My mother had 15 children, but we were trained and nurtured by the finest caretakers. I raised an eyebrow. So, your parents weren't really the ones raising you? She hesitated. Not entirely, but that is the way of our people. I nodded firmly. Yeah, well, that's not how humans do it. We bond with our kids, spend time with them, teach them, raise them ourselves. She seemed to consider that for a moment, her glowing eyes flickering with thought. And if we had 10 children, you would not be able to do this? I exhaled. Not properly. Sheeza watched me for a long moment. I could see the gears turning in her mind. For the first time since this conversation started, she wasn't instantly dismissing my argument. A small victory. But then, her lips curled in a mischievous smile. Very well, my mate. If 10 children is too many for you, perhaps we should start with 5. I nearly choked on air. Wait, what? No, that's not how negotiations work. She stepped closer, placing a hand on my chest, looking up at me with all too knowing eyes. I am simply compromising. I groaned. This woman was going to be the death of me. But looking into her radiant emerald gaze, I realized something. I was in love with her, and I was in so much trouble. I stared at Sheeza, utterly dumbfounded. 5, I repeated, voice rising an octave. That's still a lot of kids, she smiled, as if she had just won a major victory. And yet, it is half of what I originally requested. That is a fair compromise, is it not? I ran a hand down my face. That's not how compromises work. You don't just cut your outrageous demand in half and expect me to go along with it. Sheeza blinked, feigning innocence. But is that not exactly how human negotiations function? I opened my mouth to argue, but then I realized something. She had spent months studying human customs, traditions, and even bargaining techniques. She was playing me. I groaned, sinking onto the couch. Sheeza, listen, I love you, I really do. But 5 kids? That's still… She sat beside me, placing a delicate but firm hand on my chest. Her emerald eyes glowed softly. Ethan, she murmured, her voice dropping into something more serious, more vulnerable. You are my mate, the only one I have ever chosen. My people are warriors, fighters, conquerors. But in you, I found something I never expected. A partner. Someone who does not seek power, but instead seeks to build something real. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering in my chest. Sheeza rarely let her guard down like this. She placed her other hand over my own. My kind does not love as humans do. But you… Her lips parted slightly. You changed that for me. I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her alien skin beneath my fingers. Sheeza. She took a deep breath. I'm the last of my house, Ethan. The house of Zinthari must live on. If not for me, then for the children we will bring into this world. My stomach twisted. I had always known she was from a noble lineage, but I hadn't fully grasped just how much pressure she carried on her shoulders. She leaned closer. I do not ask this for selfish reasons, she whispered. I ask because my people's legacy is on the brink of extinction, and you are the only one I trust to help me rebuild it. I closed my eyes. Damn it. How was I supposed to argue with that? After a long silence, I sighed. Sheeza, I want to build a life with you. I really do, but it has to be our life. Not just duty, not just obligation. She watched me, waiting. I exhaled. How about this? We start with one kid. We take it one step at a time. She was silent for a long moment. Then, with a slow smile, she murmured, 2. I groaned. Sheeza. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to my lips, her warmth seeping into me like a fire I never wanted to put out. Agreed, my mate, she whispered. 2 it is. I knew I had just walked into a trap, and I didn't even care. The days after our agreement were a whirlwind. Sheeza was relentless, wasting no time in preparing for our future together. I barely had time to process it before she dragged me to the holo terminal, pulling up genetic compatibility charts and actual nursery designs. Sheeza, I groaned, rubbing my temples. You just got me to agree to 2 kids. Can we breathe for a second? She tilted her head, puzzled. But the decision has been made. Why delay? I let out a slow exhale. Because humans don't just flip a switch and start making babies. We have timelines, planning, mental preparation. She gave me a blank stare. I sighed, realizing I was losing this battle before it even started. Fine, I muttered. What do we need to do first? Her eyes gleamed with victory. I have already consulted the Xenobiological Union. There are certain enhancements that will ensure a smoother process for hybrid offspring. I frowned. Enhancements? She pulled up a glowing hologram of a DNA sequence, rotating it between her fingers. Your human genes are strong, but my people's biology is superior in many ways. I arched an eyebrow. Gee, thanks. She continued without missing a beat. We must ensure our children inherit only optimal traits, enhanced cognitive function, physical resilience, and, of course, combat aptitude. Whoa, whoa, whoa! I held up my hands. Combat aptitude? Sheeza, we're not breeding super soldiers. She gave me an utterly serious look. Ethan, my love, everyone in my species is a warrior by nature. Even our infants come out prepared to fight. Would you prefer our children be weak? I rubbed my temples again. Sheeza, I grew up in a place where kids played with toys, not bladed weapons. She wrinkled her nose. So, you want them defenseless? I groaned. No, I just want them to have options. She tapped her chin thoughtfully. I suppose I could ensure they have academic excellence first, with combat as a secondary. Sheeza! She gave me a sly smile. I'd jest, my mate. Mostly. I shook my head, muttering something about alien warlords and their questionable parenting strategies. Then her expression softened. She reached out, threading her fingers through mine. I know this is new for you, she murmured. It is. New for me, too. That admission made me pause. Sheeza was always confident, always in control. But now I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. This is not just duty, she whispered. I want this, Ethan. With you. My chest tightened. I pulled her into a slow embrace, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. We'll figure it out, I said softly. Together. She sighed against me, her arms tightening around my waist. Together, she echoed. I knew then, no matter how chaotic our future would be, I wouldn't want it any other way. If I thought agreeing to have kids with Sheeza was the hardest part, I was sorely mistaken. She was determined to make 10 happen, and she wasn't shy about making that fact painfully clear. The next morning, I woke up to find her sitting at the edge of our bed, arms crossed, watching me like a predator stalking prey. Morning? I muttered, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. She didn't respond, just stared. Sheeza? Her tail flicked. That was a bad sign. I have calculated, she finally said. At a reasonable rate, we could achieve 10 children within an efficient time frame of... Stop, right there. I groaned, throwing a pillow over my face. She yanked it away. Ethan, I sighed. Sheeza, you do know that humans aren't exactly mass producers, right? Her brow furrowed. Mass production implies inferior quality. I would never settle for weak offspring. That's not what I meant. She grabbed a hollow tablet and pulled up a chart. I have analyzed human biology. Your species, while slow, is remarkably adaptable. If we follow optimal breeding cycles— I sat up, staring at her. Do you hear yourself? Optimal breeding cycles? She tilted her head. Is that not how your kind does it? No, I huffed. We plan families, Sheeza. We don't just roll dice and pop out a soccer team. She frowned. A soccer team? I threw up my hands. You want 10 kids. That's an entire team. She tapped her chin thoughtfully. That would be efficient. I groaned. That wasn't a suggestion. She scooted closer, her golden eyes locked onto mine. Ethan, she said slowly, voice softer. Do you not want a large family with me? Damn it. I knew she would play that card. My irritation melted a little as I saw the vulnerability in her eyes. Sheeza, this fierce, untouchable warrior, wanted this. Not just out of obligation, not just for her species, but because she genuinely wanted a life with me. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. Sheeza, I do want a family with you. But 10? That's a lot. She pondered that for a moment. Humans negotiate, yes? I blinked. Yeah? She gave me a slow, mischievous smile. Then let us negotiate. I narrowed my eyes. You mean compromise? That is what I said. I sighed. All right. I say we start small. 1 or 2 kids first. Then maybe we see where it goes. She leaned in closer, resting her forehead against mine. 5, 2, 7, 2, 6. I groaned. Sheeza! 6. Final offer. I stared at her, knowing full well I was losing this battle. I exhaled. 3. Her tail flicked. 4. I squinted. 4. Maximum. Her eyes gleamed in victory. Acceptable. Shook my head. I just got swindled, didn't I? She kissed me. I forgot why I was arguing in the first place. Months passed, and life with Sheeza became a beautiful, chaotic adventure. She took her role as my wife very seriously. Whether it was cooking questionable alien meals, I pretended to enjoy them. Training me in self-defense, she still kicked my ass every time. Or making absolutely sure I was taking our family-building negotiations seriously. But despite her initial insistence on 10 kids, she honored our deal. Mostly. One evening, I sat on the balcony of our home, overlooking the twin moons of Zephyr 7. Sheeza sat beside me, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my palm. You're thinking, she murmured. I chuckled. You always say that like it's a bad thing, she smirked. When humans think too much, they hesitate. I squeezed her hand. Not hesitating, just realizing something. She turned to me, golden eyes reflecting the soft glow of the moons. Realizing what? That I never imagined this life for myself. And yet, I wouldn't change a single thing. She was silent for a moment. Then carefully, she leaned into my side. I would have killed you once. I choked on my drink. Excuse me? She smirked. Back when we first met, if you had gotten in my way, if you had been just another enemy. She let the thought linger before shaking her head. But you weren't. And now? She placed my hand over her stomach. Now, you are my future. I sucked in a sharp breath, heart hammering. Sheeza. She smirked at my stunned expression. Do not act surprised. We negotiated, did we not? I laughed, overwhelmed and amazed all at once. A human and an alien warrior. A love that defied the odds. a future that neither of us could have predicted. I pulled her close, kissing her deeply. "You know," I murmured against her lips, "I might be open to 5. She growled playfully. "Ethan, do not tempt me." I grinned. Too late. The stars above us burned bright, but nothing shined brighter than the love I saw in her eyes. And in that moment, I knew, our adventure was only just beginning. Want more? If you enjoyed this sci-fi romance, let me know. Would you survive life with a battle-hardened alien wife? Would you negotiate for fewer kids, or just surrender immediately? Drop a comment and share your thoughts.